Welcome back to Mechanical Engineering Made Simple. You asked for this pressure vessel series, I delivered. I started exactly where most of you are, machinist, welder, teaching myself after hours with no degree and no handouts. Pressure vessels don't give a fuck about paper on the wall. They only respect attention to detail and reputation. Let's finish this series strong. Now, let's get right into the thick of it with pressure vessel design philosophy and stress analysis. This quote right here, it sets the exact tone for everything we do out on the floor. This explainer is a direct line from the theoretical forces on a whiteboard to the harsh, gritty reality of the shop. Look, a pressure vessel is essentially a bomb waiting to go off if you don't respect the design parameters. Your theoretical degree doesn't weld the seam, and it sure as hell doesn't hold the pressure. The steel only respects flawless execution, period. Inside a generic pressure vessel, we're dealing with two entirely different beasts. First, you've got internal forces constantly trying to burst the shell outwards. That's the stored energy physically pushing against your welds. But listen, do not underestimate external pressures. External pressure can cause a sudden, catastrophic collapse due to the vessel's geometry. And the crazy part, this can happen at stress levels way below the actual yield strength of the material. Geometry is just as critical as material strength here. So, how do we calculate survival? It comes down to this core rule. General primary membrane stress plus bending stress must be less than or equal to 1.5 times the allowable stress. The entire design philosophy relies on balancing that primary membrane and secondary bending stress against a very strict safety factor. The rules actually allow for high localized stresses, but they compensate for it by using a higher safety factor overall. It's a delicate, high-stakes balancing act. Let's clarify the shop floor reality when we're running maximum allowable working pressure or MAWP calculations. MAWP is calculated assuming the vessel is in its hot and corroded condition. We're talking about its absolute worst case scenario over its intended operating life. On the flip side, MAP, the maximum allowable pressure, applies strictly to a vessel that is brand new and cold. Never ever mix the two up. Your relief valves and your safety parameters, those are set by that hot and corroded MAWP. Now, here is how we calculate the physical thickness for a torus spherical head. T equals 0.885 times P times L divided by the quantity S times E minus 0.1 times P. This isn't just some textbook equation. This is the exact physical thickness of the steel you are about to weld. It proves how the internal pressure, the crown radius, the allowable stress, and the joint efficiency all come together to dictate exactly how thick that metal needs to be to keep everyone alive. Which brings us perfectly to the ASME Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code, Section 8. This right here is the ultimate standard for pressure vessel design. What's really fascinating is their concept of design by formula. Instead of requiring a microscopic, agonizing evaluation of every single localized stress point on a generic vessel, the code uses standardized formulas with heavy built-in safety factors. This approach covers those localized stresses implicitly. It gives you a reliable, highly conservative blueprint that actually works in the real world. But hey, a design is just paper without execution, right? Let's talk about welding procedure specification, or WPS, and fabrication. There is a rigid hierarchy of documentation you have to follow. Step 1 is the WPS, your actual blueprint for the weld. Step 2 is the PQR, the procedure qualification record. That's the physical test proving the WPS actually works. And step 3, welder approvals. This paperwork legally and physically proves your competence before you ever strike an arc on a vessel. No exceptions. This flow of documentation connects the paperwork directly to the torch in your hand. The WPS and the PQR aren't just bureaucratic hurdles invented by management. They dictate the exact, non-negotiable parameters that the shop floor must execute to pass code. If you decide to go rogue and deviate from the WPS, you are instantly compromising the integrity of the vessel and violating the core safety principles of the code. Let's talk about that execution. When fabricating full penetration welds with advanced processes like plasma welding, precision is everything. When you are fusing those longitudinal and circumferential seams, you have absolutely zero margin for error. The extreme importance of eliminating root defects just cannot be overstated here. A root defect in a full penetration weld under high pressure, that is a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. You have to get full fusion. End of story. Before we even pull out the advanced testing gear, we start with our eyes. Visual inspection catches the immediate red flags, and the limits are incredibly strict. We are talking about an undercut that absolutely cannot exceed a maximum of 1 millimeter. Weld sag capped at 3 millimeters. If your fit-up gap or your throat thickness is out of tolerance, the weld feels right there on the spot. The visual check is your very first line of defense in protecting your reputation. Once it passes the eyeball test, we move into non-destructive testing, or NDT methods for welds. We're essentially pitting two major categories against each other here. On one side, volumetric testing, like radiography and ultrasonic testing. These have the deep penetrating power to see right through the thickness of the weld to find internal voids or lack of fusion. On the other side, surface methods, like magnetic particle and dye-penetrant inspection, are specifically designed to catch microscopic surface cracks. You need both to guarantee total integrity. You also have to pay attention to hardness testing points mapped across the heat-affected zone, or haze. We test this to guarantee that the intense thermal shock of the welding process hasn't fatally compromised the original metallurgical strength of the parent steel. Because look, you can lay down a cosmetically perfect bead, but if you've embrittled the surrounding steel in the process, the entire vessel is completely compromised. Next up is our final proving ground, hydrostatic testing in the Pressure Equipment Directive, or PED. This is where we contrast hydrostatic water tests against pneumatic gas tests. Hydrostatic tests use water, usually pushed up to 125 to 150% of the design pressure. Since water is incompressible, a failure usually just means a messy leak. But pneumatic testing? Listen to me carefully here, because gas compresses. A pneumatic test presents a stark bomb-like stored energy hazard. If a vessel fails under a pneumatic test, it straight up explodes. To manage these massive, fatal risks, we rely on standards like the PED's safety requirements. The Pressure Equipment Directive classifies hazard levels strictly based on the pressure volume product. Essentially, it calculates just how much stored energy is locked in that system. It enforces vital safety requirements from absolute material traceability on the shop floor all the way down to the final bursting tests. And the ultimate rule for a bursting test: when the cylinder fails, it must not fragment. It has to yield and tear, not shatter like a shrapnel grenade. This series was built for the welders, grinders, and shop floor guys with no cushion. I started the same way you are right now. No degree, just hunger. If you're willing to outwork everyone and protect your reputation like it's all you've got, you will make it. Victory belongs to those who refuse to lose. Special shout out to Air Carbon Arc. This series is for you. If you want a shout out and you need a topic covered that you're struggling with, drop a comment. Thanks for riding with me, Design Junkies. Stay hungry.